Bradley Beal returns. Eastern Conference Titans duel. James Harden plays again. Lots of big games. Big news about the draft maybe being 2 days, and it's 2 weeks of the season. Panic time for which teams? We'll talk about all that today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Locked On NBA, where you're hearing two guys who you normally hear on a Monday. I'm Tony East with Locked On Pacers. He's David Ramil with Locked On Heat, and we've got a lot to get to after a busy night in the NBA, a news-filled day, and we're officially actually a day over 2 weeks into the season. Does anyone need to be hitting the panic meter after a slow start? We're talking about it all today. And David, I think we should start with a highly anticipated return of a player for the Phoenix Suns, Mr. Bradley Beal, who made his season debut for Phoenix today in Chicago.
Yeah, welcome sight for Suns fans to see Beal return to the starting lineup. No Devin Booker in that lineup. He's still out due to injury, and Bradley's return a little anticlimactic as he finished just 3 of 12 from the floor, finished with 13 points, 3 of 6 from three-point range, but doing just enough to help Phoenix eke out a 1.116-115 victory over the Bulls. What did you make of Beal's return?
Yeah, he played it well with the starters. Like, his stat line is not good. He did not score the ball very well, but he was a plus 16, right? Like, the lineups he was in were effective for Chicago. He moved the ball okay. He's going to be the point guard for them with Booker out, so they kind of need him to just be that initiator, even if he's going to look like a guy who hasn't played all season and is on a new team. And remember, they had that crazy good, like, they look good in the preseason. I think they know Bradley Beal is going to fit in, but they get, they won a game here where Beal and Eric Gordon combined were 4 for 21, and KD shot under 50% too. Like, it's a tough game. So obviously some growing pains going on for the Bulls in general, Beal being a part of that, but he did fit well into his lineups, even though it took the Bulls extra time to beat this, or excuse me, the Suns extra time to beat this Bulls team. Not a very good Bulls team this year.
Yeah, no, they're struggling as well. We'll probably talk about them later on when we get to our panic meter, because they've just not been good. No DeMar DeRozan, like, he just hasn't been the same player that he has been in the Bulls uniform. They're not getting much contribution from anybody else. We heard after the first game of the season, they were already having a players only meeting, and they kind of tried to play it off, but there's obviously some problems there. And I don't know what happens next for the Bulls team, because they don't seem like they have the personnel to just flip that switch, but it seems like they're going to probably go through some roster changes, maybe even a coaching change. I don't know. That might be speculative on my part, but I think that's certainly a possibility worth considering. But as far as the Suns are concerned, like, we were talking about this before, Book's out, Durant's been known to have injury issues. Beal is an X factor moving forward. Like, can we still consider the Suns legitimate title contenders, knowing that they're probably going to be facing a rash of injury at some point once the postseason breaks out? Like, you don't hope for that to be the case, but despite the fact that they're so talent heavy and top heavy, and they have all this great talent on the roster, are they still legitimate contenders in your opinion?
I think so. It's weird though, because like everybody always says if they're healthy for a lot of teams, and sometimes I think that's stupid. Like, duh, if there's a big injury, a team is worse. But teams that are injury prone, it's a worthy conversation, right? And the Suns are one of those teams where, like, their 3 stars do miss a lot of games every year. So it is a thing. Like, how often will they be at full strength? Will they actually be at full strength in the playoffs when it matters for them to be at full strength? And the more reps they get are better, right? They talked about this last year where they have 3 games with KD in the regular season, 4, and that ended up being an issue for them come playoff time in terms of reps and experience. So it all matters. I think at their best, they can be fantastic, but we haven't seen enough of it yet. You know who else we haven't seen a lot of yet?
Who's
the
that?
James Harden Clippers.
Oh, boy.
Who still have not won a game. A loss in Brooklyn today for the Clippers. David, I don't think 93 points is very good in the 2023-24 NBA, but that is what the Clippers scored today against the Nets. They were 8 of 36 from deep. They only got to the line 13 times. Harden finishes 4 for 9 with 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. Are you concerned about this Clippers team? It's only been 2 games. Where do you stand on them right now?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a system that's what James Harden said he is, well, it's a bad one. He's not a system player. He's a system comma player. Like he's I just think, you know, they're going to have some growing pains. And it was an interesting quote that I saw tweeted out after the game from Paul Pierce saying, you know, it's going to take some time. We're not concerned and things of that sort. But I think you have to be. Like, this is a team so quickly put together and somewhat hastily, right? And it's that same kind of tired concept of like, we'll just gather as much talent as possible and it's going to work because you have more talent than the opposing team. Well, that's not the case. It hasn't been for a long time. Like I remember before I was even covering NBA basketball, watching the big three in Miami and thinking, oh, when you have that kind of talent, you're a shoo-in. Well, hell, they only won 2 out of 4 championships during that 4-year stretch, and they were arguably the most talented team of any in the NBA. Your Pacers, you know, were always a tough challenge for them because they were a better team overall, despite, you know, perhaps having less talent overall. So I look at this Clippers squad and I'm not convinced. Like, I know you can get great performances from Harden, et cetera, but they have to mesh together. You have to get great play from everybody, and you have to form some kind of identity. And as good a coach as Ty Lue is, I don't know that he has that kind of luxury of being able to wait for a couple of months to see if whether or not they'll gel. So I do have concerns. Maybe they're a little premature, but I don't know how quickly this group will turn things around, especially given the looming fear that either Kawhi Leonard or Pierce might lose a lot of time moving forward.
So I believe a little
Paul George.
Paul Pierce,
Sorry.
Paul George.
Yeah,
I believe a little because of a guy whose name you just said, and that's Ty Lue. Ty Lue's the star whisperer. So if anybody can convince those guys to be playing the right role, it's Ty Lue. And the reason I say that is because I think they can be good if they don't start all 4 of the stars at the same time. I think Russ off the bench makes a lot of sense. He was good in this game. 8 assists, made some shots. That's what they need from Westbrook. He's been much better with the Clippers, although he was inefficient from the field in this game, right? But it makes more sense to me that a Terrence Mann or, you know, a forward who doesn't require the ball very much would start instead of Russell Westbrook, and then they can mix and match a little more throughout the game. We'll see if they figure that out or if they get there or if they keep trying this to see if it works. But Ty Lue's a guy who can talk to a star player and effectively get them to buy in to tricky roles. Congrats to the Nets. Their defense has been good all season.
Yes.
Lonnie Walker, the star of the show offensively. And we have to throw in, unfortunately, one of the coolest stories of this season, Cam Thomas got hurt in this game. Man, that dude can make everything. That dude can face away from the basket and make it. It's a bummer that he's hurt. Hoping for a quick recovery there. Last one. This should have been the lead game, but there were bigger stories in the NBA. That's how crazy the season has been, just 10 games in. Celtics Sixers for the top of the East. That's a fun one to say early in the season. You know who is doing well after the James Harden trade? His old team, the Sixers, who beat the Celtics. Celtics had a great start, but they didn't have it in this one. Tatum and Brown, 10 for 27 combined. Maxey by himself was 11 for 27. That one make all the difference, David, in a 3-point game.
Yeah, 106-103 in Philadelphia's favor. They now improved to 6-1 to lead the Eastern Conference. They look great. Porzingis had a big game for Boston, but the story here is really the addition by subtraction in the Philadelphia side of things. And their team that's poised to make even more changes down the road, they look really sharp. They're getting some nice contributions from everybody there. Kelly Oubre in the starting lineup as being a real plus player. Nick Batum, Batum, Covington, they all provided a little bit of a spark too off the bench. So, you know, that trade helped Philadelphia so considerably great. Like it made them from a good team to an even better team. And you would think that, again, the subtraction of Harden might be a problem, but not when he was such a drain on everything else. And they're getting such great contributions from Maxey, who seems like he's poised to be a first-time All-Star this season. It's just really helped that group. And again, yeah, I think guys like Oubre and everybody else finding their role, being more comfortable in the new hierarchy in Philadelphia, sharing the ball more, making great plays. It's been really fun to watch. They're a much better team than they were.
Harris, Milton, Oubre, and Embiid is pretty well equipped to defend Boston's team, right? Like they actually have decent size to match up. I still think, I think in a best of 7, I'm picking Boston. Maybe it's because I watched them hang 150 on the Pacers last week, but
good point. Yeah.
The Sixers defended them well and forced misses from a lot of key figures, like only 9 shots for Drew Holiday. He was a plus 13 though. Like the Celtics starter still played well, The difference was, and this is a difference for the Celtics a lot, their depth is not the best. And so the bench was key here, right? +7, Nick Batum in his 26 minutes. Robert Covington gave the Sixers good minutes. So that depth is key. If the Sixers can add a little more, that will be vital. Let's talk about the panic meters, because there's another key team in the NBA, the Lakers, that got smoked tonight by the Houston Rockets. The Grizzlies lost again. There's lots of teams to talk about panicking, but David, I think we have to talk about something else first.
That's right. Today's episode is brought to you by our partners over at eBay Motors. They've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us this week, Tony, on their eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Here's his team right now: Brandon Miller, Dylan Brooks, Bismack Biyombo, Denny Avdija, and Jordan Hawkins. I'm going with Bismack Biyombo. I saw him in tonight's game against the Miami Heat. He looked good overall. Not a great game from Biz, but he does the little things. He pulled down 10 rebounds, finished with 9 points, 4 from the floor. But he was also matched up against Bam Adebayo, so maybe that was not an ideal matchup for him. Not many centers do well going up against Bam, and Bismack was no less. He was impacted just as much as everybody else, but he's still a great pickup for your fantasy team. He's going to eat up a lot of innings as they go through some depth issues with their incredibly mounting injuries. No Steven Adams, of course, no Brandon Clark, so they're going to be shorthanded for some time. Bismack is going to be able to do some good things there. He's going to put up some numbers. He still looks solid even at this age, and he'll put up some occasional big numbers. He's not going to put up a monster game at this stage of his career. He never really did, but he does all the little things. He pulls down those boards, gets those points, those buckets that you need on your fantasy team. So Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. What's your dream ride, Tony? If you had to have a dream ride, what's the car that you'd most want to own right now?
And I can't say these new Jeep Wranglers are awesome, though. They look sweet.
Well, they do. And you know what? If you do wind up getting that Jeep Wrangler and you're looking to upgrade it, maybe you wanted some new floor mats or maybe some other kind of accessories. Well, the best place to get those would be through eBay Motors, where there are 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions do apply.
Back here on Locked On NBA, talking about the panic button, the panic meter, whatever panic thing you like to hear about. I like the panic button because that implies that some front offices have a literal button that at some point they fall to 2-8 and they hit a button and they have to have a meeting the next day and make decisions and change things about their team. We're going to talk about teams who are off to a slow start and maybe thinking about hitting said fictional button that does not actually exist on any NBA's front office. I hope a team does.
I like the idea of like a panic room where everybody gets summoned in there, just shut everything down, like media outside waiting. It's not, we've heard of player only meetings where media and coaches aren't allowed. What if there was a panic room just for front office personnel? Like the ship is sinking, red lights blaring all over the facilities. It would be interesting to say the least. But yeah, a few teams have started off the season quite badly. I'm not sure. Let's get into it because panic might seem a little extreme, but at some point, these things, as I mentioned before with the Clippers, they start to pile up. You want to be able to start building habits progressively, positively as the season goes on. Yep. You don't want to just start off at such a deficit that you might not be able to come back from. And there's a team, and I just saw tonight, the Memphis Grizzlies, and they, I think, are in full panic mode at 1-7 to start the season. Now, they have a pretty legitimate excuse due to the number of injuries. Again, almost half their roster was out due to injury. But how do you rate them? Are they a panic-worthy team at this point in time, considering the 1-7 start?
Yeah, I'd say yes. And I think that might be a little bit of a hot take, but can I throw some numbers at you? If
Yes,
you don't
please.
mind? Okay. So let's pretend that they're currently 1-7 without Ja, and Desmond Bane's playing kind of good, right? So like they're getting good production at the top. Jaren's had
Yep.
some up and down moments, right?
Yep.
So right. And they need to sign Biyombo. They need things. So let's pretend, right? They're 1-7 right now. That they go 9-8 for the remaining 17 games that Ja is suspended. So that would put them at 10-17. And then they win at a 50-win pace for the rest of the season. Pretty good.
Not enough.
That's probably too high in the West. The West is good. That's still only 44 wins, right? That's not going to cut it. The West is really good. So they're already really behind and that is with a winning record without Ja the rest of the way and a very good win pace after that. So they need to pick it up like today. Losing to the Blazers was bad. They had another loss that I thought, oh man, that one hurts. And we all know why, right? Like 3 of their top 6 players, probably maybe 5, are out for a significant amount of time. And they have a lot of youth that they've been developing well, but those youth were drafted and expected to play much smaller roles.
Right.
So they're just kind of in a really tough spot. And you don't want to just cash in to try to chase wins for a brief period of terribleness. It almost feels like this is heading for a gap year, and you don't want to overreact to 8 games, but they're in a really tough spot. A very crummy 8-game stretch can sink your season. I saw with the Pacers last year, and Halliburton got hurt, and they lost 7 in a row. It changed their whole season.
Yeah, tonight's game was winnable for them because Miami had their usual problems in the fourth quarter. They've been known to slip, let a big double-digit lead slip away. They did that against the Grizzlies tonight. They were up 10 with about 3.5 minutes left, and Memphis came back. And eventually the Jaime Jaquez Jr. 3-pointer kind of was a dagger for the Grizzlies' chances at winning. But you can't blame anybody on this roster. Like, I know there's going to be people saying, oh, Taylor Jenkins could do things differently, but they just don't have the options. And then you bring up a good point that they're these role players are asked to do more than I think they're capable of right now. And maybe they'll get there eventually, but you don't have that kind of luxury of time, especially in the NBA. And I just wonder what the Grizzlies front office does. Do they feel like, maybe Jenkins was part of the problems last year when the culture around the team maybe got a little bit hectic? Maybe he lost a voice in that locker room. Maybe he can't seem to get them all on the same page. I don't think that they're a dysfunctional group, but eventually you're going to start to see more and more problems, knowing that Ja's not coming back for a while, and you're going to hear about, some disgruntled players and wondering what the heck is going on, why they're not getting more opportunity, etc. Things are going to start creeping up over the next few weeks, especially if they continue this losing trend. So I agree with you. I think a panic meter is certainly in full effect.
They're getting close to the button. Do we need to do something different? What do we do? The doors are closing in the panic room. In East, I don't really know that anyone is like drastically off of their expectations or under them. The only team, there's 2 teams that I would bring up, and that's the Cavs, who are 3-5 but have had a ton of injuries. Jared Allen just debuted last Friday. Garland played a little and then was out for a while. They're 3-5. The Bulls are 3-6 and have played a tough schedule, a lot of close games. I don't know if either of them are so far below expectation that there's panic. Do you agree with that? Do you have any different opinions on those guys?
It's tough because I think the Bulls certainly have their problems, and I think those have become a lot more evidence as we saw or I talked about in the first segment. They could be close to making some rash decisions, whether it means blowing up the team or making some trades or firing their coach. And I just don't know how they're going to be able to weather this storm. And I think we've seen them, and even during the DeRozan era, where they started off badly and then wound up getting some big games here and there and wind up improving their roster overall. But I think the ceiling on this team was already pretty low to begin with.
Agreed.
And having started off as badly as they have, I don't know how realistic it is that they're going to be anything beyond a play-in team at best. And that's not where they wanted to be this season. So I think pretty soon we'll start to see them panicking. And as for the Cavs, I think the idea is that they'll probably turn it around because they'll eventually get healthy and they're a good and deep enough and talented enough team. But everybody looked at them as being one of the top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference before the season started. Like, they were going to go and barnstorm through the regular season, and if they had any questions, it's ones that would crop up during the postseason. Well, I don't know that that's as realistic anymore, given the fact that they're going to struggle, and they've struggled so far and might continue to do so as they continue to work their way through these injuries. And that's a team that, as we said with the Clippers, they need to be on the same page. They need to be building these habits throughout the regular season so that the time comes in the postseason and they can show some growth from what they did last season. So I don't think panicking might be necessary just yet, but it's getting pretty close. I've got an eye on that panic button, if nothing else.
Cavs before the end of the month play Toronto, Atlanta, Portland, Detroit, Portland again, and the Foxless Kings. I bet we're looking at them by the end of the month as a team with a much better record than the one they have now. The Bulls play the Pistons at home on Sunday for their next game and then have a tough stretch. There are 6 losses: OKC, Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, and Brooklyn. Okay, those are all mostly fine. Brooklyn at home, you'd like that back. And they lost the Pistons. So maybe you're right. Maybe the Bulls need a switch kick in the butt. In the West, there's 2 teams that maybe 3, that I think merit discussion here. Short and quick here. I just watched this team, the Jazz, 2-7. No one thought the Jazz would be in the mix for things, but that's way lower than they were expected to be. Any worry for you there?
I mean, again, I think it's the lowered expectations, and I think they caught a lot of teams by surprise. Last year, they went through some changes. They got John Collins, obviously, and I think there's been some rough spots in trying to incorporate him into the lineup. So I don't think panic is right because the expectations were lower for them, and maybe you could just sort of punt on this year, but I wouldn't expect them to be like buyers at the trade deadline or anything else. I'm sure they probably make some moves, clear up a couple roster spots, and wait till next year to see what they can improve.
Well, I was trying to stall to talk about the Kings, who are losing to the Blazers as we were talking. Malik Monk hit 2 free throws. They're headed to overtime with the Blazers right now. Fox has been hurt for a bit. They have the same caveats as the Cavs to me. If they lose the game that we can't wait for, they'll be 2-5. Any panic with the Kings?
Yeah, not quite yet. I mean, especially with the loss of Fox. I mean, I think it's you can kind of give them a pass. And they're a good team. I think they'll turn it around sooner rather than later.
They, every time I've watched them, generate a bunch of good shots and just miss all of them. So I feel okay that they'll recover, and they could be 3-4 and win tonight. And then it would be stupid that I even included them. The last one, the inverse of the Grizzlies. Dylan Brooks went to the Rockets in the summer, which is my segue to the Lakers. The Rockets smoked the Lakers tonight. Smoked them. 128-94. Wasn't even close. Dylan Brooks only went 2 for 6, but was a plus 18 because the Rockets defense is low-key pretty dang good this year. That doesn't matter. I just wanted to say that. The Lakers, 3-5 now through 8 games. They did not have Anthony Davis tonight, but in general, I was going to say before that, they've had a lot of Bron and AD. Do you have any concern about the Lakers at 3-5?
I'm not. Lakers fans will have plenty of concern on my behalf. I think, look, AD is going to be healthy again at some point. They're going to worry. There's already talk. I've already seen speculation that they're looking at. We have to add a 3rd star. Although we had a summer of hearing that Austin Reeves was said 3rd star. Apparently now that's a problem. Reeves has struggled. I think maybe the summer, maybe the combination of a long postseason might have been somewhat problematic. And I think teams are, again, looking at him. We've seen these sophomore slumps in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's having somewhat of a step back. He's still a fine player. He was just probably overhyped a little bit to begin with. As good a player as he might be, he was probably not that 3rd star. And with AD out as good as he looked early in the season, he's also struggled now with injury. That's going to be a concern moving forward. And this is a different LeBron James that we're used to. He's older. He's still dominant on occasion, but he's not the kind of guy who can carry a team. And they're not getting enough from some of the guys they signed, like Christian Wood, Gabe Vincent, who's been out due to injury, et cetera. So I'm not panicking yet. I think, this is a team that's shown that they can flip the switch, especially when you have such top-tier, top 10 talent in AD and LeBron James. Assuming they're both healthy later in the season, they'll be fine.
Yeah. The other thing, no Hayes, no AD, no Hood Schifino, no Gabe Vincent, and no Jared Vanderbilt today. So they're banged up. We gave that caveat to previous teams. And I think the big one is you nailed it. Austin Reeves, 41% from the field this season. Has not been that guy they need him to be the team that they want. I think he'll get better. Yeah. And I think they'll be okay when they get healthier. Right now, though, Funnily enough, all the health talk for their team was about AD and Braun. It's about everybody else. If they can get everybody else back, I think they'll be okay. We will see. Let's talk about the other big news from the league. Pretty short and sweet to end this show. The two-day draft, which Shams Charania reported, is something gaining steam in the league. But before we do that, David.
Today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. Look, we spent a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. And I'm thankful for that connection we have. And today, I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means? Bring on extended travel. Bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue, because you are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis, Viagra, or Revatio prescription. And this is possible because of our friends over at Jase Medical. Go online right now at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jase. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it, and I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply, and I also ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication, go to jasemedical.com. Again, that's JASE medical.com to see if it's offered for you. And remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase.
Welcome back here to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, if we're talking about the draft, how about you listen to something about the OKC Thunder? Ryland Styles will have more on that team, which is going to be, if there's a two-day draft, dominating the coverage. Still have every pick in the future two-day drafts. Shams Charania of The Athletic and Stadium reported on Wednesday as a part of meeting today with general managers. The NBA discussed the possibility of extending draft format to 2 days, beginning as soon as 2024. That's next year. He also said the concept has been increasingly discussed in recent meetings as team executives believes they could better utilize more time for both the first and second rounds. David, here's what I'll say. I've heard it floated before, this idea, because the second round is pretty fast. And so teams in the league who are trying to like figure out who's on what team and who has what picks would like that extra time to like figure out who has what resources. And in that way, I suppose it could be good for the players because they could have a better chance of ending up in a good situation for them, and teams could make the best moves possible. From a TV perspective, I can't say the second round of the draft is going to be a killer TV draw.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you there. I usually give the benefit of the doubt because, you know, we've talked about this with the in-season tournament. We talked about this before with the play-in tournament, and both of those things I've started off well. The play-in tournament, I think, is a rousing success, so there's no challenging that. But the two-day draft just seems more like anything. I know that the narrative is we're going to have more time to make better decisions, but it kind of feels also a little bit like a cash grab, just stretching it out over 2 days. And I can't see any reason why anybody would tune in for that second day, especially when you're getting daily, or regularly tweeted announcements as far as who gets drafted and gets selected or traded and things of that sort. So I don't know how they can make it work. Like the second round in basketball, I'm old enough to remember when it was more than 2 rounds. I don't know if you recall that, but the NBA draft used to be more than 2 rounds. And, they cut it because nobody cared about players that were selected in the 5th round in the NBA draft. And so it was just narrowed down to the 2 rounds. And it's been that way for a while. And I still don't know who cares about the second round. Like most people don't expect those players to really make a contribution. Maybe there's a trade here and there, but you're kind of just swapping these picks of players that might not really turn out or might be contributors at the end of the bench, might be two-way guys that you might hear about. And maybe it's fun or interesting, if not fun, especially for the players who are, racked, their nerves are racked during this whole process, but maybe to see a big name slip from the first round possibility to the second round and see what team picks him up and might be the quote unquote steal of the draft. I just don't see how they could make this appealing for a second day. And that's what it's all about. It's a great show as is right now. It might even be a little bit too long as currently constructed. And the idea of them stretching it out over a 2-day period, I don't see how that works. Like, I just don't know how that you could possibly make it interesting from a viewer's perspective. And that's really what it should be about. You're trying to bring in fans. You're trying to make this an interesting event that you can kind of mark on your calendar and look forward to if you're a fan of the team. and seeing, X player that you've never even heard of maybe get selected with the 53rd pick in the second round of the NBA draft, I just don't see how that's something that people are going to tune into.
Yeah, the draft definitely used to be way, way too long. For those of you who are young and maybe don't know this, like Bruce Jenner got drafted. Then Bruce Jenner, got drafted into the NBA in 1977. Like people were like throwing away their picks in the fifth and later rounds. So here's what I think. I think a pre-second round draft show talking about the first round and the moves teams made and where teams sit, especially with free agency being right after, would kill, right? People would love it. And people would tune in and watch that. But the second round part itself would be not as popular. So it's hard for me to say how that would do on TV. Like how much people who watch the second round now is just because it's still on after the first round ends anyway, right? So it's hard for me to kind of parse that out. Obviously, you and I would have to be locked into that kind of thing, locked onto that kind of thing in the second round. So I don't know how it would do from a TV perspective. I do, like I said earlier, though, think that if it helps the league make better decisions, a lot of teams are going to be for it. And I think that could be better for players if it means they end up in a better situation. But if it does end up being like a really awkward or terrible product, maybe just don't even televise it. Maybe just like run a draft show and then be like, here's who got picked or something. I don't know. But they can't have another Taco Bell commercial moment happen. The NBA never wants that to happen again. So maybe that's part of
this. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think that's really a motivation. Right?
No,
but it's just, no. I don't know what the thought process is. Like if it's just teams saying we want more time, well, I mean, that's just never how they've operated. That's kind of why you have the months leading up to the draft process to make these decisions. And I don't know that a few extra minutes, because it can't be hours, because that would just be
right.
That would be terrible. I mean, that's
like we can make a deal with the NBA, David. They can have their second day draft if the first team doesn't have a 15 minutes on the clock. What have they been doing for the last 2 months that they can't do in these 15 minutes? That always drives me crazy.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hope that this is just something they're floating out there. I think we saw also on today's news that Adam Silver, in an appearance on the JJ Redick podcast, says that he does monitor Twitter. Hopefully the reaction to this will be so negative that they'll just discount it altogether. We can only hope.
I wonder how in tune with like memes about him he is.
Hopefully not too in tune.
I don't think JJ Redick should have asked him that, but I would be curious to know Adam Silver's answer to that question. Fun show today. Lots going on in the league. Games every night, in-season tournament night on Friday. More games tomorrow. We'll have it all here on Locked On NBA. You can hear tomorrow from your co-host, Wes Goldberg, as well as Locked On Nuggets host Adam Mares. Thank you all a ton for listening to Locked On NBA today. We'll see you soon.